first guest is Adrian Hon, co-founder and CEO of Six to Start.
Brilliant. Hi, Adrian. How you doing?
Hello.
You good?
Hi. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks.
Excellent. Excellent. So welcome to Arcadia. You're our first guest. And so a bit of responsibility on your shoulders there. No pressure, no pressure. So we've got our audience waiting to ask questions. Please put your questions in the YouTube to bring to Adrian. So Adrian, you've got 5 minutes, please.
Sure.
Worth noting that Adrian can't stay with us for too long tonight, so that's why we put the kind of Q&A with him just for him today. So without further ado, I'll leave you to it, Adrian. If you just wait for us to switch our cameras off, then it's all you.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro. So I'm a game designer. I run a games company called Six to Start. We make a game called Zombies Run. But I'm not going to be talking about any of that. And I should say I'm going to make it life easier for the other speakers tonight by not using any slides, so their presentations will look way more impressive than mine in comparison. What I am going to do is I'm going to tell you a true story about what it really means to connect with people online. I was very lucky to get online in the early days of the internet, back in the late 80s and early 90s. And that was when you could buy an actual book, a physical book every year to find out all the cool things to see on the internet. Because obviously there was no Google, there was barely even Yahoo. It was just like a directory. And that was a real way to discover things online. And one of the sites, one of the things I discovered was a server called TinyMUSH, and that's M-U-S-H at the end. It was a text-based online environment, a little bit like a text adventure, multiplayer text adventure, or a multi-user dungeon. And these sorts of things would eventually become games like massively multiplayer online role-playing games like Ultima Online and EverQuest and World of Warcraft. But the one I was playing was a mush, a multi-user shared hallucination. And these were a little bit different from MUDs in two ways. The first was that they were less about combat and more about chatting and roleplay, more of a kind of social environment. And the second way they were different was that any user in the mush could extend the world by creating new rooms and objects. So it was really user generated, kind of like the metaverse, but better. And so when I logged into TinyMUSH for the first time, I must have been like 11 or 12. And I happened to be reading a lot of Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels at the time. I had all the books, I had like the map on my wall, all of that. And I had it in my head that I would go recreate the entire city of Ankh-Morpork, which is a Discworld city, in TinyMUSH on my own. Hundreds of roads and buildings and things like that. And unsurprisingly, that turned out to be extremely difficult if you've ever tried making a game, not least because I didn't really understand how to do scripting, or I didn't actually read any instructions whatsoever. So I was working away for hours trying to build all these streets and objects and things. And eventually I caught the attention of a couple of the wizards on the server who were basically admins. And they invited me into their secret wizard room. And you might think I would be grateful for this, keen to learn from the experts, make friends, that sort of thing. But remember, I was 11 years old, and so I was a complete brat. Basically, whenever I was around them, I'd just be making fun of them, breaking shit in their room, creating objects that said rude things, just really being a complete troll. And so, they would just go and kick me out of the room and of the server. Except they didn't ban me. So the next day I would just come back and log in and find my way in and keep building my streets and cause more trouble and get kicked out again. But after a while, the time it took for me to get kicked out grew longer and longer because we started having proper conversations. So the wizards realized I was just a kid. I mean, they didn't realize I was 11, but they realized I was just a kid. And they And I discovered they were just university students in America, computer science students. And they'd ask me about what I was trying to build and give me tips. And I'd ask them about what it was like to study in America and what it was like over there and what the computer labs were like and what games they were playing. And it was such a small interaction in such a small world. But looking back on it, that was a real moment of patience and grace that's more difficult to see now. Because these wizards were basically all volunteers. You know, TinyMUSH and all the other things like it, they were completely free. Not just free to play, but with microtransactions or a subscription, but 100% free and open source. I guess the server time was being donated by a university or something, and the wizards were doing it for the love of it. And so under the circumstances, it would have been completely understandable for these volunteers to just go and totally ban me for being a complete asshole because they literally weren't being paid for this. And I'm quite sure this is what would happen in most commercial games now. Like you just get banned, permanently banned. But I like to think that they were there because they really liked meeting people and they're patient enough to tolerate, teach a kid who blundered in. And that's what I've tried to do now when I run forums and chat rooms myself with thousands of people. You've got to keep an eye on trolls, but you know, they're just people. And the best thing to do is see if you can make them a little bit smarter and well-behaved. So I didn't stay on TinyMUSH for very long in the end. I'm not sure why. I think this was around the time me and my brother got into trouble for running up an enormous phone bill for connecting to the internet. And part of the reason for that phone bill is because I got access to the Ultimate Online beta test, which was one of the very first graphical, massively multiplayer online games. And it was a huge privilege for me to be there at the start of something that would go on to shape the entire world of gaming and the internet. And the only reason I got into that beta test is because one of those patient wizards on TinyMUSH gave me an invitation. So thank you very much.
Wow, that was so good. Thank you so much, Adrian. I
Thanks.
really enjoyed that. Yeah, I had a heads up about what you're going to talk about, but I didn't expect that, which is awesome. So thank you so much. That was brilliant. We're going to bring Safia in now to have you some questions over to you. Got some great thoughts from the YouTube page, which is brilliant. Hi, Safia.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. What a fantastic talk. Thanks, Adrian. Same. Then badass. I just heard about the topic, but without hearing the talk yet. So yes, we have a couple of questions for you. So,
Sure.
So the first question is. So the world of MUD has inspired many creative young people to explore a career in games. Can the tech trends of today, like the metaverse, be a way to inspire more diverse people into making game? Or are these new platforms too refined or commercial to foster diverse creativity?
Well, I mean, you know, that's a big question. I think that, you know, the best thing about TinyMUSH was that I could go in there and I could make anything I wanted. And, you know, I didn't make any money from it. You know, there was no profit in there. It was just because I was interested. And so the great thing about the tools we have now is that they're much cheaper, you know, because it was really expensive to have a computer to get online, and we had a massive phone bill. So it is better now in a lot of ways. And the tools are much easier to use. It was really hard building anything back then. But on the other hand, it's come with a lot more of a closed platform and ecosystem rules. And some of the rules are good, but you know, we have to make sure we keep the good things, you know, the accessibility and, you know, the community spirit without having it become too corporatized.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you. So the other question we have is actually well, quite similar to the first one. It was about if you'd recommend to young people that are interested in getting into the industry to like try, you know, doing content creation for existing game or modding, or if you'd recommend to jump directly into trying to develop something small?
Well, I think I mean, the nice thing is you can do either. Like, I got into video games by doing modding. Like, I started out modding Command and Conquer, you know, and Red Alert back when I was like a level designer, you know. And so, you know, that's a great way to get started. And, you know, the tools are really, really good.
Can I jump in there with an extra question?
Go for it.
I think what's interesting really the past maybe 5 years or so, that this has been this kind of rise of the kind of the community management aspect of things, right? And I just found it really wonderful that someone's, you know, kind of, you know, being kind to you and having a bit of patience with you has really kind of impacted your interaction with tech and games making. So I do wonder, I mean, do you see that as a growing trend in terms of community management being such a quite a significant role now in games development?
I mean, yes. Like, I think that and I think actually on the one hand, I'm a little bit like intimidated by the growth of Discord, because I'm just like, wow, I can't imagine like having to moderate like, you know, a chat room like that, you know, 24/7. On the other hand, I think people seem to be better behaved in those chat rooms than like, you know, on a lot of other social media. So I don't know, it's really hard. Like, people can be real assholes sometimes, but you know, and if you're a moderator, all you remember are the people who are making trouble. But it's worth it so much. And I think that if you are, even if you're not a moderator, if you're a member of, you know, a community, you know, an online community or like an event series like that, please be considerate towards your moderators, because it's just a thankless task, you know, and that's a way to make it better.